Hello guys, Cat, and in today's Battlecats video, I am doing part 6 of Overrated versus Underrated. So, these are the 12 units that I'm ranking, and I'm going to be ranking them from underrated to overrated, with slightly overrated and slightly underrated in between, and fairly rated in the middle. So, before anything else, let's get right into it. Cat Machine will start the list off, and I believe Cat Machine is slightly underrated because he's a wave shield, he's a tank for multiple niches, and granted, later in the game, he becomes a bit outclassed because of how much damage some enemies do, but throughout early and middle game, if you can get Cat Machine's true form, he's pretty useful. He has close to 500,000 effective health against them, and, he has a cheap recharge, he's pretty inexpensive as it is, so he's slightly underrated just because of the combination of niches and abilities that he has. Next is Balrog, who I'm going to put at slightly overrated. Now, I use Balrog in almost every lineup. He's soloed so many stages for me. He's a great unit, but the only problem is a lot of stages have a lot of peons. And sometimes even bringing a wave unit or two doesn't cut it because there could be a lot of middle health units that could absorb a lot of shots, and Bahamut can die on a lot of advent stages before it can do any damage. Now, Balrog is an absolutely amazing Uber at times. As I said, there are many stages that you could send one or two of them out and it's over. River Styx is one. But at the same time, some stages like Queen of Coronation, he doesn't work so well in some of those with the bees and stuff. So slightly overrated, exceptional unit. That was one of the harder choices for me to make in this video because Balrog has helped every person out at some point. But, single target, slow movement speed, a lack of immunity to certain weaknesses definitely hinders his usage at times. And then in Uncanny Legends, when units have much higher raw stats, he's great at chipping bosses down and stuff. And with his attack up, he can do a lot of damage, but sometimes it doesn't cut it. He might not get a shot off in some stages. So, slightly overrated for Balrog, but still a fantastic unit. Next, and I thought this was pretty interesting. So a couple years ago, Hermit Cat got his true form, and he's strong against Relic. So that gave him a whole new niche and everything. He has increased stats on top of that. So I'm going to say he's a little underrated. I still think he's slept on because, there's a lot of specials that people don't fully recognize everything to. But now that Hermit Cat has a niche, some people haven't, woken up to that yet. And, with his waves, he has 3 waves, 3 attacks, and now he's strong against relics. So, for being a very cheap and disposable unit, he could deliver a ton of damage, clear a ton of dogs out or squirrels or whatever, and chip bosses from afar. So, slightly underrated, pretty intriguing unit. Next, we have Oda, who recently got his 4th form. That's the thing now. Some units are getting their 4th forms. I know Windy also got one, and a few other units. But Oda is pretty sound, honestly, except for some flaws. Bad survivability, one trait, you can't really use him as a generalist, and a long attack animation, so he can often get hit or killed during that, during his animation. And one knockback, as I said, horrible mobility and survivability, but 100% freeze up time. So you got to think about that with area attack, and he's medium long range, so that's impressive. But the problem with him is he's partially outclassed by Bomber Cat because a few Bomber Cats can do what he can do for a lot less price, a lot less sacrifice, and they could do it quite reliably and in more stages because of 4-star stages restrictions. So I'm going to say he's fairly rated because he's a bit complex. I actually own him, and he helped me a lot through early and mid game before I had Bomber Cat. But once I got Bomber Cat, I very rarely used him. I mean, I had Chronos and stuff. Granted, I got quite lucky with some of the Uber rolls I got, but, he fell off after mid-game, in my opinion. So I'm going to say he's fairly rated. He's a hard unit to rank because there's a few things that go into him, especially with his 4th form now, but I'm going to say he's fairly rated for now. Next, we have our lovely Manic Eraser Cat, who is fairly rated. In fact, might be a little underrated because people haven't recognized he is the greatest generalist meat shield in the Battlecats. Maybe even the greatest meat shield, period. So, fairly rated. I think everyone knows that. Slime Cat. Slime Cat is used in a lot of lineups because you send one of them out, he's super cheap, and he can clear a lot of stuff out. I mean, he bites, shockwave across the map, gone, send another one out in 10 or 15 seconds. So I'm going to say he's fairly rated. Some people make him out to be God, but, there's some stages I absolutely love him. And, when I was fighting King Wawa, he and Gravelone were pretty much the reason I beat it because of the amount of waves that I could send out. So, one of the best advent units you can get. Next, we have Mineko, who got a third form, a couple years ago. She got her third form, and it didn't do a ton for her, and it's kind of expensive, but she gets the dodge on a lot because of the low critical hit chance, the low stats in general. But you're also forgetting she costs 149, so she literally costs less than a wall cat. There's some usages for her early game, but once you get Catasaurus and stuff, she really does fall off because you can still use Catasaurus in 4-star stages anyway. So I'm going to say she is fairly rated, and I don't think she deserves too high of a ranking. Alright, next, I'm not sure if I'm going to rank Zombie Cat, but I'm going to say he's fairly rated. We all know he has pretty bad stats, and he's pretty much a combo slave. That sums him up pretty well. Next, there's Valkyrie, and Valkyrie could be quite useful early and mid-game, especially before you get a lot of good Ubers, and you'll get her true form pretty early, so her stats are still somewhat usable by then, accompanied with the chance of a freeze, so, that's nice. 4-star stages in middle game, you might use her a little bit, but, once you get Euron, Mina, and some of the better legends, there won't be too much usage for Valkyrie. She's still fun to use once in a while when she isn't getting obliterated by bosses or rushing to her death. So I'm going to say she's fairly rated. I think the Battlecats community put her in the right place. Most of us can acknowledge that early, middle game, she has a bit of a usage, but after that, she really, falters big time. Next is Ironclaw X, who, a lot of people make out to be the inferior version of Dancer Cat. And that's true after you talent Dancer Cat, because when you talent him, he gains 80% stat boosts and everything. Shout out to one of my commenters from a previous video for teaching me that. And Ironclaw X, his stats really do fall off. Even if you get him at level 50 and everything, it's a big investment for an Uber, someone who isn't even the quality of a cheap Uber. So, yeah, I'm going to put him in fairly rated. I used to love him when I was, a younger kid and everything. He looked really cool and everything, and I just wanted him to be as strong as possible. He was such a fun unit to send out, but his stats just didn't keep up with the meta. Next, we have Professor Cat here. Professor Cat Jobs, I think. And Professor Cat Jobs has the ability to weaken everybody on the map to 1% damage. So he'll literally take 99% of the damage out of your enemies. And if his surge hits, which is his big thing, if his surge connects, then he could perma weaken. So that's incredible. The problem is his surge is randomly generated somewhere. If he misses his surge, enemies can rush into him and kill him. And even though he could survive a lethal shot at times, it's still pretty risky because of how low his stats are. And I don't think it's a guarantee survive. So, you know what? I'm going to put him in slightly underrated, though, just because when his surge connects, it does a lot of good for your team. And, he has a very long recharge, so you really want to make sure one of them survive. I don't know if I'd recommend him in a zombie stage or anything like that, but use him responsibly because he can do a lot for your team for his price and everything. Just protect him. And finally, we have Pastry Cat, who combines a low proc chance with rapid attack. So, what does he do? He weakens. And his weaken, it's not too much to hold your breath over. And his stats are so low that you're probably not going to use him. I think most people recognize that he is not too good. And on top of that, he gets outclassed very early on by Thaumaturge. So, this is my list. Slightly underrated Cat Machine, Hermit Cat, Professor Cat Jobs. Then fairly rated, we have Oda, Manic, Eraser Cat, Slime Cat, Mineko, Zombie Cat, Valkyrie, Ironclaw X, and Pastry Cat. And in slightly overrated, you could also make the case for fairly rated because he's quite good, Balrog Cat. Alright, this is my review on these 12 units. Agree, disagree, comment down below. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn notifications on so you never miss an upload. Sparring Cat signing off, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.